it is about you. It's not about me sharing my journey necessarily. It's about what it is that I can impart, and hopefully a playbook that you can take into your lives. So I have titled my talk today, From Professional Success to Purposeful Impact. What I like to do when I speak, and I don't know, I have too much time for it, so I'm going to pick on 4 of you, just to kind of tell me what the mood of the room is. If you can just have one word to tell me where you're at today. I'm going to pick on you because you're giving me inspired. I'm going to put somebody in the second row. One word. Anybody. Excited. Third row. Anticipating. That's a lot of pressure. First row.
Curious.
Curious? Not you, Nyari. Second row.
Expectant.
Expectant. Third. Yeah? Pardon? Motivated. And last one at the back. Intimidated. I feel intimidated. Good. So the reason I chose this topic is, as you heard from Gerald, I went through a fellowship with the Aspen Institute, and I'm very happy to tell you about it outside the room if anybody is interested. But effectively, this is a think and policy tank, originated in Aspen in Colorado, but really wanted to take career individuals from a point in their lives where they were obviously career successful, but what did it mean to be significant? You know that there's a point in your career where you get to where, and you're not there yet, many of you are not there yet because it's early in your careers, but you will get to a point where it's like, is this enough? Am I feeling moved enough? What am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? And that whole journey around how do you translate success into significance in a really meaningful, impactful, lasting way is what Aspen tries to do with individuals. And really it's around understanding yourself. First of all, the first pillar is around self-mastery, self-knowledge, self-understanding. What is your leadership context? The second one is around understanding the society you want to be impactful in. So do you understand your societal context, your leadership context? What are you solving for? And then lastly, having heard all of that is kind of like then designing your own personal playbook to say, understanding who I am and understanding the leadership context I'm solving for, the societal context I'm solving for, how do I take these two things and create a playbook that's deeply personal for me and helps me to become more impactful. So I also, you might have noticed, I didn't know there was a bookshop upstairs, outside, but I brought my own bookshop today. Like, how many of you think, read? How many of you are readers? Well, that's a lot of you. Like, is it, do you read a lot of fiction? Do you read a lot of nonfiction? Do you read a lot of business books? What do you read?
Biographies.
Fabulous. I'm speaking to the converted here. Because one of the things that has troubled me, and I obviously work with a lot of young people in my organization, but I'm also on the board of Endeavor, as a lot of you have heard. And Endeavor is a platform to support entrepreneurs to become scaled. I met this young man who's sitting in the front row through Endeavor, so I'm very pleased to meet you in person because we've had a lot of interactions virtually as part of that initiative. But really, one of the things around young people and some of the conversations I've heard is around reading. And it's around this idea that there's a generation of people, and clearly I said I'm speaking to the converted, that are not accustomed or not comfortable with long form reading anymore. It's kind of like a lot of short form. And I think one of the key provocations that I'll make is that reading is a really fundamental part. I personally haven't met any leader who I aspire to, who I want to model my life around, who doesn't just wake up in the morning and consume materials that might be related directly to their line of work, or is just really helping them understand the world. One of those, and I'll get to it at the end of the speech, because this is something I want to encourage all of us to start to think about, is this man called Ray Dalio who wrote this book called Principles, which in many ways has become a Bible to me. And the reason why is that Ray Dalio became, or is the founder of Bridgewater, which is the world's largest hedge fund. And over his 40-year career, he really started to have a discipline of codifying what he's doing. And it's kind of, I'm experimenting, I'm getting feedback, and I'm writing it down so that I'm not relying on something new or new information, but I'm really starting to apply my life's work and my life experiences and starting to institutionalize them in a way that makes me more effective, but also importantly we'll get to in a way that I can start to use it to teach others and to institutionalize and to transfer. Because I think that's ultimately what we're talking about when we're saying the significance piece. What are we leaving behind that outlasts us? How are we institutionalizing that? How are we making sure that there are systems that we create that are alive long after we've gone? So Ray Dalio is a really powerful individual in that sense. And unfortunately, it hasn't come out yet, but Adrian Gore, who obviously many of you know as the founder of Discovery, over his 30-year experience, I mean, you know, Discovery has gone on to have 40 million customers in 40 markets around the world. But Adrian Gore has done something very similar. His book comes out at the end of July. So for those who are readers, I would really look at getting that. And he talks about a few key principles, and one of them is around disciplined optimism. Now, I'm an investor, and I have to be optimistic about the future, right? You heard today from John Foster Pedley that we understand the context that we're living in as a country. We understand what's happening with our institutions. We understand what's happening with the economic pressures. But we really need to start to discipline ourselves to look beyond the obvious and to generate internal optimism and use that as a lens to look for opportunities. And we know that there are opportunities in this country, on this continent. We heard all of it. In fact, in many ways, John Foster Pedley stole some of my speech, but it was really around the context in our country and on our continent and really just provoking that kind of thinking. Personally, I take care of my own mental health in a way around how much do I really want to know about Madlanga Commission? Really? I think I know enough to know that there are some deep institutional failings in our country, but I really don't want to know the detail. And I feel like for me, from a personal perspective, going into the detail of the Madlanga Commission and every witness and every story, doesn't allow me to be optimistic. So I know enough so that I understand my context, but I protect myself and I protect my optimism by knowing enough to navigate it, but not to go down too far into a rabbit hole that allows me to not have real perspective. But let me get back to this. So this is one of my favorite poems by an American poet, Mary Oliver, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner. And she really asks the story, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And we know we're only here for so long. What is it that we plan to do with it? And I think that the significance blueprints that I spoke about as over my career, over my experience through Aspen, etc., is built on a few pillars. I think the first one we heard again today is around mastering your craft. There are many types of individuals around the room today. I looked at the sectors that a lot of you come from. I think there were a lot of financial services, just hands up so I can get a sense of lots of financial services. There were, I think, 2 IT/telco individuals in the room. I know Nyari's one of them. And shout out, there was a We Think Code delegate. Yes, and there was somebody from BBD. I don't know if they're here. Okay, maybe they didn't make it. But anyways, I think the part about mastering your craft is something that most of you can identify. That's where you are in your careers now. And I think it's important. The success around your career is foundational to the rest of it. And it's really around what are you doing to develop that. Again, John Foster Pedley used the Obama, and I was thinking about Obama quite a lot because I watched the launch of the Presidential Center. But he does have that clip that's famous on YouTube to say, just get done, just GSD. Have a bias to action. Be the person, the guy or the girl who people think about when they want to do something. They know that Nyari is my girl. And in my team and in the spaces that I work with, I know who those people are. When there's a complex task or something that's time sensitive or urgent, I'm not democratic about who I choose to do it because the stakes are high. So I do tend to go to the people who've proven themselves time and time and time again. And I think that that's something that you have to really start to prioritize. Are you the person in the room who is seen as that person? And if you're not, I mean, this is a journey, right? We're not saying you're there yet. But if you're not, what is it that you need to do to become that person? And I think one of the first things that I encourage people in my team to do is first be brave. Just be brave. Mistakes happen. We don't always have the right answer in the right rooms. But you just have to do the brave things. I've got somebody who I mentor who's very sensitive to that. And I coach her all the time. And she's extremely good at what she does. But she'll go into a board meeting and field an unexpected question. And it'll be her undoing. She'll go and the next day she'll say to me, oh, I can't believe so-and-so asked me that question. Did you hear the way that I responded to it? That's not the way I wanted to come across. And I say to her often, do you know that nobody is still thinking about that moment today except for you? And you are your own limitation as far as that is concerned. So I think it's really around the mastery. What do you need to do in your chosen profession? Who do you need to surround yourself with? And where do you go for real feedback? Because that's the real gem here, to say that reflection comes from feedback. Progress comes from feedback. So are you actually putting yourself in spaces where you're soliciting feedback? I know many of you work in organizations where you might have a biannual performance conversation. Yeah, I mean, that's okay, but it's really part of a larger HR process. It's not really how individuals are going to start to scale their progress and their impact in organizations. And it really is around who is it that you trust who's going to be able to give you that feedback in the spaces that you are around the work that you're doing. You might know, for example, at Endeavour, we give very difficult feedback and very honest feedback. And I'm very pleased that you're still at it, because it's not feedback that Ndabentle went and kind of, it was his undoing. It was really feedback that he brought back into his business model. He reiterated and I think is on a path of continuous improvement. So I think on these, and we can touch on them in various ways, but each pillar builds on the last. I think what I wanted to say is that we are also in a generation where people want to skip things, people want to move fast through things. It's not the sustainable path. Each pillar is fundamentally important. Each pillar builds on the last. Each pillar compounds, and it really is also a virtuous circle that starts to create a flywheel around yourself and your role in life. So the first one, I mean, we've spoken about this, don't know why this thing is on animation. I'm really daunted by technology, by the way, and somebody in my team decided to make it animation. But anyways, as I've said, expertise is your non-negotiable foundation. You've all chosen the various spaces, the paths, the professional pathways that you have for a specific reason. You're there until you've decided you're not there, which is also okay to, just check in regularly about whether or not you're doing something that speaks to your talent and your purpose. But while you're there, expertise is your non-negotiable foundation. And as I said, get stuff done and have a bias to action, seek feedback. The power of compounding, as I said, in the finance circles, for those of you in finance, lots of people say compound interest is like the eighth wonder of the world. Yes, it's true in finance. It's true as well in how we conduct ourselves and the skills and the habits that we build. Those things compound on each other, every decision that you make. But the last one is like life is long and focus on the arc. There will be setbacks, there will be disappointments. And it's really important that we look at life as an arc, as opposed to what did I achieve this year specifically, or what did I achieve in this season. We need to extend ourselves grace. It's not always going to happen in the ways that we planned, for reasons that are sometimes external, but sometimes for reasons that, we need to look at ourselves and our own contribution to how we've sabotaged our process. That happens. We need to have those conversations with ourselves. But it's really important to extend ourselves grace and just to get back on track and just focus on that arc mentality, to say, it's okay, I'm getting back on track and I'm focusing on the big picture. So I think there it's really about the granularity in the role, in the detail, but also being able to elevate yourself at the 30,000 feet level and saying, look at my life and is it generally in the right direction. We spoke about building bridges. And here again, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a deep introvert. Some people who you ask about me would be very surprised that I identify as an introvert, but I am. And it takes me a lot of conversations with myself to come into a space. I know I need to network. I know I need to connect. I know I need to have fellowship amongst my peers, amongst my contemporaries. But it takes my psyching myself up, I must say. I had to psych myself up to come here. I have to psych myself up to go to a networking event or go to an Endeavour drinks or Endeavour dinner at so-and-so's house. But it's important, it's fundamentally important that we connect and that we find people that we want to work with, that we are on a common mission with. And I think this is really important, and I know there is a conversation around networking and the skill of networking. It's really important, but I would go so far as to say what's more important is seeking connection. And I think that people can really discern that who comes into a networking space being quite transactional and wanting to achieve something, and who's there really to seek understanding, to seek connection, and in that process, do something with somebody that's quite, I use the word alchemy, that kind of creates something out of something that didn't exist. So that's deeply important. And I think we also, where I've found the greatest kind of joy, the greatest affirmation is yes, in my professional circles, but also in kind of seeking and creating accountability and relatability circles with your peers. I mean, you're comfortable there. You can be yourself there. You can go out into the world. You can experiment. You can put your head above the parapet. You can disappoint yourself. You can embarrass yourself. But you need to go back into a relatability and accountability circle to say, yeah, no, okay, you didn't do well there. You didn't cover yourself in glory. But this is a safe place that kind of rebuilds you and sets you up to try again. I think that's really important. And I've been able to do that in women's circles, to create a group of women who come together from time to time and share. It's not with a professional outcome in mind, but it's really just to build oneself up, to get perspective, and to really have diverse relationships where you're not in an echo chamber, but you really have a group of people who call you out and challenge you, and importantly, show you who you are. Because a lot of the time we have like these very distorted ideas of ourselves because we come from a place of insecurity, right? We talk a lot about it, and I'm sure I've heard people ask about imposter syndrome. Yeah, I mean, we're all imposters in some way, shape or form. We all feel that we don't kind of belong in those places. If you are invited into a boardroom or invited into a fellowship or invited, there is a part of you that, do I really belong? And I think it is important to be in groups that actually hold the mirror to say, yes, girl, yes, you belong there. Because you need to have a voice that's not that voice that continues to question why you're there or your sense of belonging. But you belong, we belong. This is our country, this is our continent, this is our time. We belong in all of these spaces. And I think when you come from that perspective and you see others in the room who look like you, I think this whole imposter thing becomes less of a thing, because you see another young woman or another young man who looks like you, who has a similar background to you, you develop this sense of belonging and really being really yoked to the outcome that you're there to achieve in the room. Leading with purpose, and I know there are quite a few conversations this morning and throughout the day. I looked at the list of speakers and their topics. This is a common topic today, and I think that I love this thing that this is the highest human experience is contributing to something larger than yourself in community with others who share that mission. I'm on a board of a school with a founder who I won't name today unless you ask me outside the room because I'm being recorded. And I have a front row seat into somebody who's the most mission-driven person I've ever met in my life. They are driven by this higher purpose that is outside of themselves. And there's nothing more motivating, galvanizing, that's held you more to account, that kind of brings you back than having this distinct purpose and having other people to do it with. So, and I think what's really important, I brought some books, as I said, but if I use kind of like these two examples of Capitec and Time, so maybe I'm speaking to the entrepreneurs in the room, maybe I'm speaking to the financial professionals in the room, and if you think about all of these purpose-driven organizations that have been founded in democratic South Africa, and I mean, it's insane if you think about how young our country is, and the number of companies that have started out of a purpose and a context that is so unique to this country. It drives me insane when I think about solving for the unbanked, or solving for quality education at scale, or solving for telephony and telcos and kind of digital inclusion, and kind of solving for power, which Lee's going to talk about. And who is solving these problems? We're the most proximate generation to the problems. You guys, if you think about your backgrounds, your family backgrounds, where you're from, I don't know where you're from, but I'm guessing a lot of you are from outside of Johannesburg. A lot of you have families or grew up in townships or in rural communities or have direct relationships with people who are still in those spaces. You are the most proximate to some of our biggest problems as a country and as a continent. But who's solving them? It's not us. It's not us. It drives me mad. But for reasons that we obviously understand, and again, we extend ourselves some grace. We're kind of second generation, and we access to capital, etc. But I really want to challenge this generation to say, there's a company, a fintech company, that is one of their biggest revenue streams right now is advancing airtime credit. Guys, like who has challenges with airtime credit? It's us. It's our people, it's our society, it's our mothers, it's our aunts, it's our grandmothers, it's our domestic workers. Those are the people who have airtime advance issues. So we're the ones who need to identify the pain points that our families and our children are experiencing and use that enduring optimism that I talked about, and use our relationships and join people who want to go onto this mission with you and solve those problems. They've all been commercialized, and they should be. But I think the wrong people are enjoying the fruits of kind of those problems. So I think I would want to really challenge you to say, yes, personal purpose is important. And a lot of kind of first, and again, I don't want to make assumptions about who's in the room, but a lot of people are driven by first generation issues. And we know what those are, or second generation issues, and we know what that is. But I think that's important as a personal purpose, as a personal driver. But it's also I'm really going to encourage you to kind of lift yourselves up. And I said, use that 30,000 feet view, that what John Foster Pedley spoke about, that demographic dividend that is unique to us. as a continent, what are we learning from that, and what are we using that, and how are we infusing that into what we've chosen to do with our lives, and having that as part of the purpose that motivates us. And then create legacy, I think is very linked to that. I spoke about what is the best vehicle for that legacy or that purpose to find expression, and in ways that you're building the machine that's going to sustain itself. And I think Lincoln Mali is a wonderful example. I mean, we are all here today, not just because Lincoln is being charitable. I mean, if you looked at that video, yeah, he's being charitable in some ways. But I'd put it to you that he's actually being philanthropic, and he's institutionalizing, and he's creating the systems, and he's bringing in the people. And God forbid, I think, Liam, I'm challenging you, that it's going to outlive him, isn't it? It's going to be something that he is well known for long after he is not here anymore, which is never. But who are you bringing with you, and who'll carry this forward? I think one of the things that I ask myself often, and I think it's a good question, it's to ask yourselves, am I, as my life's work and my work in my corporate, and again, I'm extending grace because a lot of you are not in the life work phase, but maybe it's kind of, is my work going to recreate the same problems for somebody else? Because we don't want to revisit issues. We don't want to revisit generational challenges. We want, as I said, everything needs to be foundational and compounding. We want to deal with issues at a systemic and structural level. And is your work allowing somebody else not to experience the same things that a first black female is experiencing, or a first young person is experiencing? Like, how are we changing those spaces so that, like, they're operating from a very different departure points than we had to. And I think one of my favorite is kind of, again, as I say, stay proximate. A book I was going to bring on staying proximate, if anybody hasn't read it, some of you might have watched the movie, is Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. It turned into a movie that Michael B. Jordan starred in, and it's really around a Harvard-educated lawyer who could have been anything. If you're Harvard law educated, you can be anything in the world. But he decided to devote his life to the criminal justice system, and we all know that the people who are most affected by the criminal justice system in America are black men, and he was extremely proximate to that idea and has devoted his life's work to understanding, to being close to a section of society that's been forgotten by many people. So it's again an invitation to say, you have the perspective, but stay close so that you can draw the insights and use those insights to build that legacy around yourself. And I think on giving back, again, just to scale the work of other people. And again, I don't want us to start from scratch. Like, we don't have to reinvent every wheel. So if anybody here is really moved around rugby, I would say, yeah, maybe start the Ndabentle initiative around rugby. But there's also the Lincoln Mali one. And I think that what we're not doing is using that to kind of scale the efforts of others. We don't all have to start from scratch, and we don't all have to reinvent a wheel, but it really is that same provocation around find other people who share that same fire, who want to be on that same mission, and kind of start to scale each other's work rather than working as individuals and kind of doing things that are subscale and not really optimized. And then the last one, obviously, like we speak a lot about all of this working and mastering your craft, etc. And it's really around the self-care. And I think if we look at ourselves also as a machine that needs to be generated and looked after and oiled, and what are those practices that we have to be disciplined around, like around our mental wellness? Is it about our resilience? Is it about our, which relationships we look after? Because a lot of the people who are closest to you in your life are going to bear the brunt of your ambition. Some of you are moms or will be mothers. And there will be some sacrifices and trade-offs you make, and your children might bear the brunt of your ambition. Your spouse might bear the brunt. Your parents, and many of you don't live near home. Some of you are working in Johannesburg, and your parents and your families and your extended families are elsewhere. And who's bearing the brunt of that ambition, and how do you kind of continue to look after them and look after yourself in the process? And again, that last point, but I often extend yourself grace. Don't be so hard on yourselves. I feel like the world is hard on young people. I think if I think about all of the things that people say about Gen X or Gen Alphas, and the attention economy, and you don't read, and you want things to happen too quickly, and I think just extend yourselves grace. I mean, you are in a particular time, you're occupying space in a particular time in the country, and I think that you might find your generational mission now, but you may also discover it later. But in the process, just extend yourself grace, and as I said, use that perspective around life being an arc, and just making sure that the arc and the trajectory is generally in the direction that you want it to be, but don't focus on kind of the small discrete periods in between. So going back to the books and why I chose them, like I said, I would suggest, and one of the young people that I work with, who's actually one of the most effective young people, I introduced him to this book, and he's actually used it in better ways than I have, in the sense that he started to do this, and he documents, and he does a project, and he seeks feedback, and he writes down that feedback, not just of like what people said about him, but what did I do in that moment? Like what technology did I use? What financial structures did I utilize? And he just has this enormous playbook that he goes back to, and it is so effective. So, like I said, Ray Dalio has done it with great effect. Adrian Gore is going to be doing it with great effect when the book comes out in July. I already know because I've spent some time listening to what he's talking about on LinkedIn about it. But find your playbook and your toolkit and write it down and kind of refine it and let it be what guides you, because it'll remind you that, oh yeah, when I did that, this is what I did. You don't always remember. I mean, we get feedback, we move on, life is quick. And it's just kind of like, how do you start to memorialize the stuff you're learning, the stuff you're hearing back, and relying on your insights at the time to just improve. I then, like I said, these I would really recommend, and there are others around businesses that you can really relate to. And one of the things about South Africa being such a young country, I mean, America celebrated its 250th anniversary. There isn't a single person alive who can relate to the founding fathers of America, but we can relate to our founding fathers, and it's a young country. And like I said, there are new businesses that have been created in this 30 years, and the founders are still here, and we can understand the stories and relate to the stories. So I think just use that to be aware of the opportunities that have been exploited in your lifetime, and understand how you can use these same lessons to continue to exploit, because I do think that the opportunities, again, given our structural inequality, given our demographic, are endless. Like I said, think about airtime advance credit. Like, that's not happening in America. It's happening in South Africa and Africa for a reason. And then, I mean, I'm sure you all know who Shonda Rhimes is. I only said it because I had lunch with last year, was like, yeah, I'm in my year of yes. And I was like, I'm in my year of no. Personally, I'm in my year of no. And I'm in my year of no. And again, the arc, I'm mindful of the arc. But I've got a daughter who's in matric this year. And I want to create whatever capacity I have. I just need to just stay focused. So please sit on this board. Please do. No, it's my year of no. But you guys are not in your season of no. You're not in your season of no. So say yes, do big things, do brave things, put yourself out there. And then somebody who really exemplifies that, I don't know if anybody follows Emma Greed. Anybody? Emma, you do? Emma Greed is the founder, you don't know that, of Skims, the real founder of Skims. Her and her husband are the brains behind Skims and Good American. And she's just recently come out with this book, and it says Start With Yourself. And whereas I think I talked about Dalio and Gore being really thoughtful and institutionalizing their insights, this is like more grits. Like she operates from a place of instinct and gut and grits, and she's had a phenomenal profession and a career as a result. So this is just something that's quite interesting to compare and contrast styles. And then I thought this was really interesting in kind of that attention economy and kind of technology, AI. I mean, I'm very daunted, like I said, about technology. Only this year I finally said, okay, let me start playing with AI tools, because like I feel like I'm being left behind and it's taking up a lot of my time. So I'm also having to be very clear around how I go into deep work, because I think when you go into deep work, because we're very distracted, we wake up, we check the socials, we check our messages, we respond on the run, we execute on this and execute on that. Like we're very stretched. And this is a practice that says you've got to just carve out the times in your life and in your day where you just cut out all of that noise and you go in and do the deep work. Because the deep work, and this as it relates to mastering your craft or defining your purpose, or even if it's like spending time with your children or family, but that's all like deep work that you go into. And I think that's the time and the space where your best ideas are created, where your best insights are generated, and kind of you just operate from a place of much more clarity. So I would recommend deep work as well. So I actually brought these books to give away. And I'm going to give you Emma Greed, because you're the only person who you're most welcome. And Gerald has been the kindest, and he's put up with me. I'm not always very responsive. And Gerald, as he said, he's a forensic investigator for the Reserve Bank. I was very intimidated by that. But he's also doing his MBA. And I thought this was a wonderful Bible for you to take into your MBA journey.
Thank you so much.
And then, I did think, who are the finance people here?
Yeah.
Gonna give you. And I'm gonna give Shane a guy. I'm gonna give you something else. And who resonates with the year of yes? Hey?
Must we scream louder?
Huh? Okay, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give it to you, and I'm gonna give you this.
Thank you.
And then I'm gonna allow you to stalk me on LinkedIn, and maybe I'll send some more books to those who didn't get an opportunity. But yes, Gerald has been very kind, because he said he was going to take questions.
Yeah, so my question is kind of directed to Sphere Holdings.
Oh yeah, I didn't even talk about that.
You speak more about the mandate of purposeful stewardship.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to ask, since you say this is your year of no's, and I know you get a lot of proposals from people. So what is the investment or mandate that Sphere has declined that you think most clearly expresses what purposeful stewardship actually means in practice?
Good morning, and thank you for that very powerful and impactful speech. My question is around impact, right? You spoke about the diverse backgrounds that we all come from, and the reasons why most of us stick it out at corporate, and most of us want to go into entrepreneurship. But some of the business ventures that are really impactful and that can scale and take the country forward have very difficult barriers to entry. You spoke about that creative solution around credit on, internet, or rather airtime. some of that will be NCR. You'll have to deal with the minimum barrier to entry because there's a lending component to it, and you'll have to meet certain criteria. So it's not easy entering certain markets. How do we think about this creatively? Because whether I'm talking infrastructure, different sectors, the barriers exist. How do we think about it differently and creatively so that young people can actually get in and create that scale that we want to see?
Okay.
And thank you for the presentation. My question is around finding your purpose and leveraging your professional skills to make direct public impact without threatening your longevity in professional services. I'm a lawyer by profession, I'm an attorney, so I find it difficult that my work allows me to make public impact without being a vulture.
Okay. So your question, what is my year of no is my personal year of no. So I'm very deliberate. I am not Sphere, and Sphere is not me. Although I'm part of the founding team and lead the business with my colleagues, but and that speaks to that institutionalizing. And my colleagues, if they were here, they would bear me out because I'm a broken record on this topic about institutionalizing. I'm not Sphere. And it shouldn't be me, and it shouldn't be an extension of me. It should benefit from my time and my talent and my perspectives, very much so. But it's not an extension of my personality or my persona. So, and I mean, the business is a investment holding company. We make long-term investments in businesses for the long term, in partnership with others. So no, we don't say no because I've said no. But we say no when, I mean, effectively we're looking after capital, and we've got certain, we've got certain responsibilities around that capital. And so when we look at opportunities, we decline them because they don't meet the parameters. They don't meet the return criteria we've established. They don't meet the kind of impact that we want to achieve. And so, no, we don't say no because Marang says no. But we say no because it's not ready. A lot of the times it's not ready, the timing is not right. And it's not to say that we've taken a firm view that we would never look at it if circumstances were different. But yeah. And I mean, Dow will bear me out. I don't really say no, but I give. No last year. But I didn't say no last year, but I gave you some feedback and what would need to be true for it to work. And so the question around barriers to entry. Listen, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. There's always going to be barriers to entry, and what I would encourage you to do is to be deliberate about being in the spaces where you're going to find people who have a creative solution to offer you, or an optimistic view about what you're seeing as a stumbling block or an obstacle. There's always going to be stuff, but people always work around them. People build around the obstacles or the regulatory constraints, etc. Where it's difficult is not being in spaces where people are going to check you on that or test your assumptions. If you're spending too much time with people who confirm your bias, because your bias is to look at what could go wrong or where the challenges are. If you deliberately put yourself in spaces where there are people who are wired differently to look at it, like, of course we can do that. Here are the options, and this is how somebody else has done it. And that's our big challenge to ourselves, because as much as we're a diverse country, we also all go into our homogenous spaces because that's where it's comfortable. If you look at your friendship groups, I don't know what they look like, but I would wager a bet that a lot of them look like a lot of us. And it's really around putting yourself in spaces. There are entrepreneurship spaces around incubation, idea generation, support that can really help you. If you've got a good idea and you can't see through the obstacle, there are always going to be people who can help you, unless there's a genuine thing and then maybe it's not a good idea. And sometimes we're also not ready to hear that feedback. To say, you're actually solving for a problem that's not a real problem, and it might work and it might solve a small problem, but it's not a scalable, commercializable problem. And sometimes we do need to hear that. So I would encourage you, and again, you're welcome to reach out to me. I do think that there are genuine barriers to entry in this country around regulation. We know how kind of the regulated spaces operate. It's slow, etc. It really benefits incumbents. It's very difficult for people to break in. But if you look at financial services, a lot of you put up your hands. Look at the neobanks. The financial services is probably the most regulated space in this country. But look at how the neobanks have all established themselves, and they've figured it out. Right? You don't look convinced, but we can chat offline. And then Mokone, finding your, I'm not sure that I understand. Why would you threaten your longevity? And again, I would challenge you to say, look at that arc. You are in the space that you are in now. You're building kind of professional skills. You're building professional credibility. You're building a perspective that's going to help you look at things differently. And I don't think that there's a dichotomy there. I don't think that one needs to happen without the other. And John talked about it, to say, like, a lot of people look at corporate, etc., as like deceits. And like, I do think that there's a trust economy that's waiting to be created. I think we're all tired of failed institutions. I'm tired of kind of the stories about institutional failure in this country. And I think there's enough people who want to understand what ethical leadership looks like in the South African context. And I think there's more of those people, to be quite honest, than people where you feel compelled to act like a vulture. And if you see yourself behaving like a vulture, it's because you're in spaces where you kind of, and I think this comes from a place of lack, and sorry to be like quite, esoteric about it, but I think that when people see scarcity, they behave like vultures. But I think if you train yourself to think abundantly, then you don't have to fight for scraps. You can actually, there's enough. And kind of, that's where I'm going to kind of use my time and my energy in a space where it's more abundant, and it's more about trust and being with people that, that you can connect with.
I'm currently reading this too.
So, okay, nice.
Cool. So it's lovely. You mentioned that, I think a lot of us are in the mastering our craft part of our careers right now, and you mentioned having that enduring optimism, but then you also spoke a lot about like direct honesty, which you are someone who's very direct and very honest. How do you balance that out to have, because you also want to have that delusion that I can create a neobank, I can do something, but also you want to be honest with yourself. How do you balance that in your career, but also like as a young entrepreneur, professional, whatever it is, to make sure that I don't lose that crazy optimism, but also I stay honest to myself?
Yeah, because we have to, like I said, our worst decisions are kind of driven by ego and blind spots, right? So it's generally one or both of those at play. And I do think it's important to be optimistic. And especially as an entrepreneur, it's like that is what you need to do. And I think, again, it's really about balancing the feedback that you're getting. Because if you're in a space that's kind of telling you the same stuff, then you're inclined to either kind of go on that journey and continue that blind spot. If it's an echo chamber that says, yeah, you're doing the things, continue to do the things. You just need to, as I said, be disciplined around having diverse groups where you're getting feedback, because then it kind of balances it out. You'll have enough of the naysayers and the doomsayers. You'll have enough of the people who share your optimism. There'll be enough of the people who share kind of the structural issues. There'll be enough for you to bring all of that back and process it in a way that's balanced. So it really is up to you to say, like, where are you spending your time? Are you spending time in seeking feedback that's diverse and constructive, or are you playing it safe and being in spaces that are going to continue to tell you what you need to hear? And I think that's our role, all of us. There's enough, like I said, there's enough information in the world. There's enough that says, if I read enough about AI, oh my God, how dystopian. But there's also places where I read enough to say, wow, this is like the most important like game changer in my lifetime. And I have an opportunity and a unique window of opportunity to play into it. It depends what I want to expose myself to. And I can expose myself to both so that I can kind of arrive at a more balanced view to say, yes, AI, there's a unique window of opportunity, but go tread with caution because of these reasons.